What's up, everyone? It's your boy Norn Rad89 here, bringing you a review for AEW Double or Nothing. We just recently had the pay-per-view. It was this past Sunday. Dynamite is today, and I'm going to tell you right now, Double or Nothing, easily this one was better than last year's. This was one of the best, and also Anarchy in the Arena. I love that match. It's one of my favorite stipulations when it comes to matches right now in terms of what AEW has done. So I'm very excited to talk about this pay-per-view. Like I said, today you're going to hear my thoughts on Double or Nothing, my favorite matches, my unfavorite moments and stuff like that, some returns that happened as well, and some appearances and all that stuff. So let's get down to this. Roll it. So to kick this off right away with Double or Nothing, we had two matches on the buy-in show. What I really want to talk about is that we had a women's tag match that had Megan Bayne and Penelope Ford going up against Anna Jay and Harley Cameron. And I want to preface this right now, or preface this little, if I could speak right now, is that I hope that this is foreshadowing that we are going to be getting a women's tag division tag title going on in AEW, because we have an AEW, I want to say, with the women's roster, there is a deep enough women's roster over there for them to have a tag division. Right now we have the women's world title, we have the TBS title, which is our secondary title, and then we have, of course, like a tag title division would be a third thing. And I feel like there is a deep enough women's roster, but to do that, you have to give them more time on television. I'm talking about on Collision and Dynamite. There has to be more segments, promos, or more matches, involved with these characters. And I hope that this was foreshadowing, because this was a really good tag match, and we've been kind of leaning towards setting up teams of girls over the last few weeks in AEW. So I'm hoping that this is, like I said, foreshadowing for a future tag division for the women. Now, getting right into the show right away, I want to talk about it, is that my only real gripe with this one, I do definitely think that this is better than Double or Nothing last year. My only real gripe with this one was that we had one match, literally just one match. This pay-per-view is great. We literally had one match that was kind of a dud. Not really a bad match, but just kind of a pointless match, one that shouldn't have really been on the main card. And sadly, it's going to be the AEW tag title match. Yeah, I love the Hurt Syndicate. They're really cool. Bobby Lashley, Shelton Benjamin. Now they have MJF involved and everything. And they're a great group, but having them go against the Sons of Texas, and we have Sammy Guevara and, Dustin Rhodes, it was a match that didn't need to be on this pay-per-view at all, for real. And I think it was like a 12-minute match. You could have totally dedicated that to 12 minutes to somewhere else in the pay-per-view, because for real, this was the only match that really took away from the pay-per-view and kind of stretched it a little bit long, because AEW pay-per-views are kind of technically a little bit longer than most. And like I said, you erase that. You could have either just took the 12 minutes out. You wouldn't have had to buy the extra 30 minutes, that they ended up purchasing and buying, because they did run a little extra on time reasons on this one. But yeah, for sure. That's the only really dud match. But highlights right away, Mercedes Moné. I called it. CEO taking that victory in the Owen Hart Cup. The only thing I want to talk about too is I heard this brought up on a couple other podcasts and channels and stuff like that, is that they're kind of telegraphing the winners a little bit with the Owen Hart Cup, where we have, Mercedes Moné was wearing pink in her ring gear. And then when we come to find out, Adam Page, he ends up taking the victory later over Will Ospreay in our main event, which is a clear-cut 5-star match. That's probably easy a 5-star match, as the best one, I think, was Hangman and Will Ospreay. So they deserved to be the main event. But he had pink on as well. So I think it's just, they kind of telegraphed it a little bit, and I think that's becoming a reoccurring theme. And I know it's like, oh, people were competing in the Owen Hart Cup, you know what I mean? We want to represent Owen, we want to wear the colors. So it's just, soon you're going to have probably like a loser actually wear it. I can't remember if Will Ospreay had pink in his ring gear or not, but Hangman did, and so did Mercedes. Some other really cool highlights is that the Kazuchika Okada match versus Speedball Mike Bailey, I think that was clear cut one of the best matches Okada's had in his title reign so far. He ends up retaining, and in terms of actually predictions, I called all the matches on this card except for the FTR versus Nigel McGuinness Daniel Garcia match. FTR actually ended up taking the victory. I should have thought of that and known that, this is the first pay-per-view match, I think, where FTR is a heel faction now, or a heel tag team. So I should have thought they weren't going to take the L, but, I picked Nigel just because I'm a huge fan of them, and I thought Daniel Garcia and them were going to pull out the victory, but they end up losing. So that was literally the only match that I didn't call right. But yeah, Kazuchika Okada retaining against Speedball. That's another great match. The stretcher match with Ricochet and Briscoe. Chef's kiss, and that one stomach turning for real. If you're not cool with a lot of blood, do not watch that match, because Briscoe ends up bleeding like a stuffed pig. It was crazy. It was wild, and he ends up taking the L on that one, though, which I think was the right decision, because I feel like Ricochet's heel persona, it's just on another level, and it's transcending upward, and AEW needs to push that, because I feel like Ricochet is their next big major heel. Another one, the Toni Storm versus Mina Shirakawa match. Easy, a 4-star match. Great. I love that one. Mina and Toni have such great chemistry together. Toni Storm ends up retaining, so I think that's the right choice, because we're going to have Mercedes versus Toni. Champ versus champ at All In. I know it's only for the AEW World title. I don't think the TBS title's on the line unless Mercedes over the week's promos or something ends up, putting the title on the line. But as far as we know right now, it's just Toni versus Mercedes for the women's title. But like I said, it's the best thing for All In, because it's your biggest show. It's their WrestleMania for AEW. That's kind of their WrestleMania, and champ versus champ scenario is just perfect, and I think this is the right time. Also, we have, like I said, in the main event, let's just talk about that one, because Hangman did win versus Will. That's setting up our other one, Jon Moxley versus Hangman for the title at All In. So that's another great storyline, and I feel like that's the main reason, one of the biggest reasons why Double or Nothing was such a huge success this year, is because AEW actually took the time to put an effort to these stories, and they're building and they're characters that we are involved in and we care about. Like the fans, we love Hangman. I must admit this, because in the first few years of Hangman Adam Page, like 2019, 2020, 2021, I was not on board with him. I never really liked him. It took a lot of effort for him to work on his character, for me as a wrestling fan to enjoy Hangman Adam Page, and now I'm in full support of him. I like his character. But yeah, you could ask my wife. In the first early years of Hangman, I wasn't really jiving with him. So I'm so happy that they're, like I said, devoting this time to building these characters and doing these stories, and it's paying off, because, like I said, I think this is clear cut one of the best pay-per-views, or PLEs, or whatever you want to call it, WWE calls it, that's happened this year. Another big thing we must talk about is Anarchy in the Arena. That was really exciting, for real. This is one of the best Anarchy in the Arenas, and I think it's cool because they totally embraced the chaos and the nuts just factor of this match, because Anarchy in the Arena is one of those matches that it's a freaking crazy. This must be crazy to plan these matches, but in terms of reffing these matches and security and camera work and making sure you capture every move and all that stuff, it's complete chaos. And I feel like this was the Anarchy in the Arena where they were just like, they embraced it. We had the Blackpool Combat Club Blackpool Combat Club, I miss them. You can tell I miss them. I'm talking about Blackpool Combat Club. We have the Death Riders teaming up with the Young Bucks, and they're going against Kenny Omega, Swerve Strickland, and all those people over there. Kind of like our Avengers crew. We have Willow Nightingale over there as well, and the Ops. It was kind of how I described it, like the Justice League and Avengers type crew, superheroes teaming up. We had Swerve Strickland with some awesome Predator ring gear when he came out. Kenny Omega doing, I think, the Captain America thing with the Omega symbol on the shield. So really, really some fun entrances and stuff like that. And like I said, pure absolute chaos. We had Hook coming in to help out. Gabe Kidd came in to help out, but Hook came in to just attack Claudio for like a moment and then kind of looked at Samoa Joe. So setting up a little bit of beef right there, I think, where we're going to have Samoa Joe and Hook maybe starting something. But Gabe Kidd came out to help out the Death Riders. And then we also had Pastor Briscoe coming out just looking really gross and raw with that crusty, dry, like old blood on his face and on his shirt, coming to help out the heroes, man. And babyfaces taking the victory in this one. We had some really cool spots, like, we had Swerve taking out his new shoes and doing the Swerve stomp with some tacks in the bottom, you know what I mean? Kenny Omega putting, I think it was Matt Jackson, through an exploding table. That was crazy. But even more importantly, my favorite spot of the night was seeing, I think it was Willow Nightingale take a cutter from Jon Moxley, but then we also had Marina Shafir take, I believe it was a Snapdragon suplex from Kenny Omega, which AEW is blowing the doors open for that, which is a big deal because this is something that I've always been a proponent of, where this really hasn't happened since the mid to late 90s, where female wrestlers were able to interact and actually wrestle or get physical with male wrestlers, which I have no problem with that. These are, like I said, trained professionals, female and male wrestlers who have trained to do this their entire life. They know what they're doing. So I have no problem with them, like I said, putting hands on each other. But of course, this is not going to be a common thing going on all the time. But like I said, AEW is kind of slowly blowing the doors open for that, which could even open the doors for an intergender tag division, you know what I mean? Having a male and female have tag titles, stuff like that, because that's something that just completely disappeared when we went into the Ruthless Aggression and also the PG era. All that stuff disappeared, and I love how AEW is like slowly opening up and blowing the doors open for that. We also had was it Tanahashi came out too, kind of teasing a little bit of Forbidden Doors coming. So we had a lot of cool returns, a lot of fun experiences, and like I said, only really one dud of a match is that tag match. That's the only one that I would have been like, you could pluck this out of it, and I would have just took the 12 minutes out of it and shrunk it down, and I think it would have been a tighter, better, more, easy watch of a pay-per-view. But it still was a fantastic one and easily one of the best Double or Nothings they've ever done. For me, this one's going to get, I would say, just a clear-cut A. This is an A right there. Just really good pay-per-view, and one that I highly recommend you guys go check out because there's a lot of fun matches, and I think the best one still, if I was to say best one, still Hangman and Will Ospreay, 5 stars right there. My second favorite match was probably CEO and oh my God, Jamie Hayter. I almost forgot her name for a second, but yeah, that was probably my second favorite match. And that one actually opened the pay-per-view as the main card. That was the main card opener, so that was very surprising as well. But yeah, Jamie and Mercedes had great chemistry together. Please let me know down below in the comments section what are your feelings on Double or Nothing and what are your thoughts on AEW going into All In. Do you think they really did successfully set up that pay-per-view? Because now it seems like Double or Nothing is kind of that pay-per-view that really sets up the future storylines going into All In. And then, like I said, now we have till July, so we have a few weeks to build up some stuff, have some good promos. Dynamite is today, so I can't wait for that. So thanks for sticking around with me all, but also share these videos and like them because that greatly helps out, especially, like I said, this isn't normal content that I do, so it greatly helps out the algorithm when you comment and do that stuff. But most importantly, I want y'all to have a safe and happy day. Peace out.